I am Ike DiLorenzo. I am a product manager at Heroku, and I am the product manager for pipelines and the features that are collectively known as Heroku Flow. This is, at its core, it's a continuous delivery solution that we'll talk about here, and it is in part powered by pull requests and in large part powered by interaction with version control system GitHub. So, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name's Matt Krieger. I'm responsible for developer advocacy at Heroku. So if you have any feedback about this product, say you use it and you love it or you hate it, please let me know. You can let me know at Twitter at Matt_Krieger or at Krieger@Heroku.com. So I really want to hear about your experiences on the platform, obviously especially as they relate to this feature, or even this presentation. So that's me.
Okay, so first, we'll talk a little bit about continuous delivery. This is probably the major point that people become confused about, and since we are talking about a continuous delivery solution, I just wanted to define the terms up front. Continuous delivery means, as it says here, that all code changes can be deployed and run immediately, and then made available to production. It is different from continuous deployment, where every time you make a code change, it is deployed and tested, like, in many cases, tested in production, but it is more immediately deployed. Continuous delivery is a system by which, when you make code changes, there's a very organized set of stages along which you can test and integrate and then deploy to production. And the trick is making these many steps flow in a way that's efficient and fast and not complicated. There's also, as you guys are probably familiar with continuous integration, this is something very different that occurs like much more upfront after the code is done. It's really for testing the code quality and the fitness of the code to be built, rather than testing it after it is built. And there are many CI solutions, and they integrate very, very well with continuous delivery, as we will see in the coming slides. Okay, so continuous delivery is sort of a big thing now, in part because computing power is so cheap, and configuration is cheap. What that means is there are services that can spin up entire environments on which you can run your software in the cloud, and then very, very cheaply, very quickly, and then just destroy them. And that is something that's really new and is driving new solutions in continuous delivery by our company and a lot of other companies. So part of this, it's like a chicken and egg thing, or why are releases so frequent now? Releases are so frequent because you can do this, and you're expected to, and there's just a higher demand for release frequency. Okay, so, oh, my animation you did not execute. So this is the old state where you can imagine throwing away one of these metal boxes would cost you a fortune. Now you can spin them up in the cloud for basically nothing. And so we are in a new cloud world that is always a line drawing. It is always blue.
Or purple.
Or purple, yeah. All right.
Something as a service, what is that?
Infrastructure as a service, yeah. You'll commonly this term will be applied to the really big infrastructure as a service companies like Google Cloud Platform, Amazon, Azure. These are the places that are providing the horsepower for you to spin up and destroy these environments, but it is often very complex to do that at the IaaS level, so you use a platform in which to do it, and we'll demonstrate that. Okay, so there are a lot of companies that are starting to do this sort of thing. Our friends over at Platform SH, this is a French company. PHP is a notoriously complex environment, and so what they've said is, well, every time I make a Git branch, I'm going to spin up an entire gigantic PHP environment with tons of files and dependencies and databases and test the code on it. When I've tested the code, I'm just going to throw the whole environment away when I merge the branch. So this is the sort of tack that we have taken also with our continuous delivery solution. Here you can see that there are stages in continuous delivery for us. You'll see in a moment in our demo how you deploy typically your code to staging, and then you promote that code to production. And the key element of this is that you are not building the code and deploying it to the stage. You are building the code and then promoting the compiled code, what we call the slug, to the next stage. That is an extremely fast operation that allows you to migrate through say you had a development stage, a QA stage, a staging stage, a production stage. At each of these stages, you can have the code migrate to the next stage and perhaps run against what is, if you guys are familiar with 12-factor, a very similar environment but perhaps with production data in the end in production and different stakeholders evaluating each environment. And at each stage, you may integrate code from other features. On the leftmost here, column here, you'll see there is a new concept of review apps that we've introduced. For those of you who are familiar with pull requests, one of the most frustrating things about pull requests is that you have the code in a pull request, you share it with other developers, you talk about how it might execute, you comment on the code, and then you integrate it to see how it runs. We've backed up that deployment process, so now you can actually run the code in a pull request. So you will see starting tomorrow, when you use GitHub and you use Heroku pipelines, when you create a pull request, you'll see a line in the GitHub interface that says that you can test that pull request code at a certain URL. And that URL is a Heroku container, that is a Heroku app, that runs the pull request code and allows you to test it. And in fact, allows you to share that URL with designers or product managers. When you merge these changes, they will be part of the staging branch and you can test them there. So I hope I have not spoiled too much of the demo, but at least you'll have some context as we go through the demo.
I've got a little bit of thunder left.
Okay.
Just a little bit.
Go. I promise not to ruin it.
How many of you have deployed an app to Heroku before? So about half. Okay. Okay. All right. Maybe I should take a little left turn here. I was going to jump right into setting up a pipeline, but I worry that there may be kind of too much magic at work there. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to blow this app up if it's okay with you. The demo might take a couple of seconds longer, but just to prove to you that it's really, really simple, as half of you haven't deployed to Heroku before. So I'm going to delete that app. There goes our application. So notice here that I have a couple of production applications. It's called Jog. This is the Jog repo. It's on GitHub. You can clone this down and deploy this yourself if you'd like. It's Jog because it's GIF or GIF, going to end that debate, which one way or the other. And the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to deploy this application to Heroku. Now, this is the Heroku dashboard. The first thing I'm going to do here, and I just want to point something out. Heroku has been built by developers for developers, which means we care about all the interfaces that developers care about, the CLI, the platform API, and of course, the dashboard. And so everything I'm going to show you, you could either do from the dashboard or from the CLI. But let's do it from the dashboard since we're here anyway. So we'll create a new application, and we'll call this Jog Staging. Now, the fact that I'm tagging it with staging is going to be important because this is a staging application, and pipelines is going to look at that, and it's going to figure out where it belongs in our pipelines, which stage it belongs in. So we've created our application, and the next thing that we're going to do is you can see it brought us right to this deploy tab. And at this point, we could create a pipeline if we wanted, so why don't we go ahead and do that. We'll create a new pipeline. So now we have this new Jog pipeline. You're going to notice the first thing that it does is it drops that staging app, or that's our staging app, into our staging pipeline stage. And if we wanted to, over here on the right, we could go and find those other two that we have, Jog Prod Frankfurt, and we'll just kind of bring all of our apps together into one place. Find so we've got one in Tokyo, and we've got one in Frankfurt. And the next thing that we want to do is we currently have no relationship between this pipeline and our GitHub repo. And there's a one-to-one relationship here. We have one repo on GitHub, and we've got one pipeline. And so we're going to go up here to the right-hand side. We're going to connect to GitHub. And you can see that I'm already authenticated with GitHub, but if you weren't, this is the point at which you'd have to. So let's go and search for that Jog repo. And here it is. We'll connect to it. So now that we're connected, we can enable review apps. But we're not going to do that just yet. I want to go into this application for a second. And we're going to configure automatic deploys. Now, Heroku Pipelines relies on a couple of different features. It relies on, it's okay, the GitHub sync and our GitHub integration and review app. So the first thing is GitHub sync. GitHub sync is going to take any changes that are made to our master branch on GitHub, and it's going to automatically push those to our staging environment. So you might imagine in a few minutes here, when we merge a pull request in, it's automatically going to get deployed. So let's enable automatic deploys. And you can see here that if we wanted to, we could wait for our continuous integration system to pass first. So until our test pass, it's not going to be pushed or deployed.
Yep. And just to clarify here, this automatic deployment is to the server of to the app of your choice, like say development or staging, and it's then within Heroku you can promote that slug through to production afterwards. Unlike typical GitHub deploys where you perhaps deploy to production from GitHub.
Now, like I was talking there, I just quickly went to the dashboard for this specific application. This is our jog staging application, and I just wanted to show you how this deploy tab has changed. We can see that it's assigned to staging in the jog pipeline. It's very easy to get to. We can see that it's been connected to GitHub, and if we wanted to, we can scroll down to the bottom here, and we can just deploy directly from GitHub. So I'm going to click on that, and as you might imagine, if you've deployed from Heroku in the past, this is going to detect the package.json that's in our repo. It knows that it's a Node application. It's going to handle that build process for us. That's really the last thing that we need to do to get this app running on Heroku. So let's leave the screen. Trust me, that's going to build in the background. We're going to go back to our pipeline for a second. So in our pipeline, we've got one thing left to do, and we can see here that it's building the app. So the pipeline knows what the state of our applications are, and it's giving us real-time feedback here. We can see it's building. If we wanted to, we could look at the logs. But we're going to enable review apps, and you can see here that we get to decide so we've connected our staging application to our GitHub repo. And so what we want to do is when somebody opens a pull request against their application, our GitHub repo on GitHub, or sorry, the jog repo on GitHub, we want to spawn a new review app. So that's what we're going to do here. We're going to say, hey, go to staging, and we can see we can create new review apps automatically. We can enable that feature. And so there's currently not any open pull requests, so we should probably go and do something about that.
Yeah, and when these review apps, there's one review app for each pull request that's created, they inherit the configuration from their parent app. In this case, it's staging. So the app knows how to configure itself. It knows what database it has. It knows what it needs to run the code in the pull request that's coming.
Because you may not want all of the same things in your review app that you want in your staging application or in your production application. Okay, so let's go back to repo for a second. We're going to create a new pull request. We're going to go into our public directory here. We're going to go to index.html. I'm sure you've all seen a bit of HTML in your day. And we're going to change this class. Once it's loaded, we'll change this to mind blown, because that's how I'm hoping you're feeling in a couple of minutes. You'll both be sweaty and have your mind blown. Okay, so we've already created a new branch, and now what we're going to do is we're going to take that branch and open a pull request. Because really, a pull request is just GitHub's way of making branches way, way cooler, way more collaborative. So now, if I wanted to, I create this pull request. And the first thing that you should see pop up on the screen here is that I've requested a deployment. Because I have this pipeline set up, and we have this integration between GitHub and Heroku, and we're working really closely with GitHub to make this integration feel first class, we know that it's been deployed. So without even going to Heroku, if somebody on your team opened this pull request, automatically they can see that it's being deployed, and in a couple of seconds that's going to update. And if we come back to the pipeline and we get rid of this for a second, and I'm going to give this a little refresh. Normally you wouldn't have to, but because I had the logs up, it was probably a little bit confused. Now what you're going to see here on the left-hand side is the PRs being created. And again, there's that integration. We can see which pull request we're talking about. We can see that it's being deployed. And why don't we just quickly open this application so we can see what it looks like in staging. So here's our staging application. This is the application that we just opened a pull request against. And if you send a text message to that number right now and voted, it would go one way or the other. But I'm not leaving that up on the screen for long enough for you to do that. So we're back at this screen. I'm going to give this a little refresh right now and come back to our jog pipeline. And we can see that it's still creating the app. If we wanted to, we could look at the log. And really what's happening here is that same process is playing out. It's figuring out that it's a Node application, it's building it, and it's deploying it.
Yep. And in a real-world environment, and a team, say, of 6 people, you may have many people creating pull requests. You will see that column populate with the pull request as people on your team create them. They may take those URLs that you can view the review app at and share it on Slack or on HipChat, and then you'll see these things self-destroy once the pull request is merged or closed.
I mean, if you look at the one that we're using currently in Heroku for Dashboard, there's tons and tons of stuff there, and I'm sure there's some secret stuff there if you take a quick picture of it, but I'm not going to let you do that. Okay, so let's open this app in a browser. So here's our jog staging PR28, and you can see definitely mind blown. If we compare that, here's our staging app, and here's our new PR. So this is this PR that we have right here, and if I refresh this for a second, all of this stuff is going to be real time very soon, but if we refresh it, you can see that it's been deployed. And now if I clicked on this, it would take me to that staging app. So again, somebody who's on your team doesn't even need to know Heroku's in the mix here. They're going to see that notification, they're going to be able to click on it, and hey presto, they're looking at your change. And you can see up in the top left-hand side here, we've got PR28.
Yep. And additionally, even for those people who don't ever use the Heroku interface, they'll still have this URL available in addition to the pull request conversation to evaluate the code. Do you have a question?
Yeah, the environment staging banner on top.
Oh, yeah.
Automatically inserted, or was that a class?
So yeah, and actually, I don't know if you noticed, but it's supposed to update to PR 28, but I guess I messed that up. So what that's doing is The app.json file, which I can show you very quickly, I think I just went to it from, well, I'll just go to it again. Jug, GitHub, we'll go here for a second. Nope, that's right. So this repository has this app.json. And the app.json is where we're configuring what is installed, what add-ons are created in that review app. And you'll notice here that it says Heroku app name is required. And the Heroku app name, it includes PR28. So it's really easy to figure out which pull request you're referring to and link directly to it from both your staging and your review apps. Really important because you want somebody to know which app they're actually looking at, right? So the next thing that we would probably do at this point, if you're working on a team, is one of your coworkers would come along and they would say, hey, listen, I noticed that you've been working on this and it looks great to me, so let's give it the old +1. Of course, I have to do this to all of my own pull requests because nobody loves any of my code. And so now I can hit this merge pull request, and as you might expect, when we come back to pipelines, you can see that our review app has been torn down. So it got cleaned up. We cleaned up after ourselves here, or pipelines cleaned up after us.
Yep.
And now we've got this app being built in staging. And as you might imagine, we've merged that change in. And if you remember, we set up GitHub sync. So as soon as that change was merged into master, it triggered this process.
Yep. And you'll notice here that when the build is complete, the SHA will change, and you'll see that there is different code in staging than in production.
And the other thing that's kind of important to note here is that because this is our staging environment and we haven't changed the dependencies, this deployment's going to happen much, much faster because the environment is the same. We've cached those dependencies. We're just going to drop them back in. So the deploy is already done. And now you can see, here's the SHA there, Shay or SHA. That should be my next.
That could be the
my
next
next poll, yeah. And so here's that mind blown in staging, right? And somebody caught that number and voted. Okay. And well done. Touche. Okay, so the next thing that we would do is we would promote this to production. So we have a couple of different production environments, and like just imagine for a moment that you're sitting at your desk, and this is your normal flow. You've got a server over in Tokyo, you've got a server in Frankfurt, and you need to get the code there. The nightmare that you would traditionally have to go through to make this happen, hold that in contrast to what I'm about to do. So I'm going to hit this promote to production, and then I'm going to do this very hard task of just moving my mouse down here and hitting promote. Now, if the demo gods are feeling kind, you can see that we're promoting to production. And I'm going to let Ike riff on about this, but notice that it's really, really fast. Despite the fact that we're going to Frankfurt and Tokyo, and these aren't just artificial names, like that's really where these apps are being deployed.
And I'll add that you are, in this particular case, you're promoting to our new private spaces product, that is basically a virtual private internet, virtual private Heroku that exists in a private environment. So the copy here is a very complex and slow process. If you were promoting from the common runtime, that's ordinary Heroku, to a production environment in ordinary Heroku, it would be like pretty much instantaneous because you're simply copying this logo over. Here, that's being copied to a data center in those two locations in a private environment, and it still took maybe a minute.
And I can prove it to you with this flag, which clearly you couldn't just put in statically. I mean, that has to be real and dynamic, right? No, it really is real and dynamic. But look, actually, I think it is static. I'm not to be sure, to be honest with you. But you can see here that we have a local number in Tokyo, and we've got a local number here in Germany. And just like that, we've taken a feature. We deployed an application from scratch, took a repo, deployed it to Heroku, created a pipeline, opened a pull request, looked at our changes. I gave myself a thumbs up. And then we merged those changes in on GitHub, regular flow. It was automatically deployed to Heroku. And the really cool thing about this is we have this really nice layer between us and the real world. We have this staging environment that we're lining up with our master branch. And when we promote, we're able to roll back. So if I went to one of these applications, let's go to Jog Prod Frankfurt for a second, and there's a disaster, I've deployed something I shouldn't have, I can very easily just roll back to the previous version. And now when I open this up, you're going to notice that almost instantly, oh yeah, because the last version I deployed also had this code base. But this is a previous code base.
But and part of the purported benefit of continuous delivery is that happens very, very rarely, that you actually have to roll back production because you have already tested the pull request in a virtually identical environment. You've tested the merged code in one or two development staging environments. You've done integration testing, and then only then is it pushed to production. So rollbacks probably are much less likely by that point.
And there's no guessing here, because you have this SHA or SHA, whatever you want to call it, and it's in both places. It's not here because I rolled this one back. We can see this was deployed 2 minutes ago, and it's the same code base in both places. If we had a pull request, it would be there too.
Yep. And additionally, for people who prefer the CLI, there is a full-fledged CLI interface in what's called the Heroku Toolbelt, which is the console at which you can use a terminal environment to control Heroku.
Questions?
Deploy to all the production environments, or
Nope.
You can choose whichever you like.
You want to do like a rollout or something? We could take, well, we've already got that code base on Tokyo, but let's say we looked at it and we were like, okay, it looks good. So we're going to X that one out. We could do it in a specific order, and we can just promote back to, I don't know what I left there, but whatever was left there.
At Heroku, some places use this thing as a wallboard because it is live all the time. You can see what pull requests are active, which are old. You know, you can see if pull request's been hanging around for 3 weeks, it's up on the board. Maybe it should be evaluated at the URL. It should be merged. It should be closed. So it makes like a cool monitoring environment for people who may not even be developers, team lead, engineering manager, product manager, designers.
Yeah.
How are we on time?
I don't know. I haven't been looking. I don't even know what time this session ends. So I was just going to go on forever.
Yes.
So what happens when something catastrophic happens in the next?
So you,
Repeat the question, please.
oh, sorry. The question, I believe, is if something catastrophic happens when you merge and, say, staging is totally screwed up and doesn't run, well, the first is it's staging, so that's very fortunate. Your code is not running there. You have a number of options available. You can optionally deploy directly from a branch onto staging. If there's a particular branch or master that you would like to redeploy onto staging, you can back out the build, as you do for any Heroku server. There are any number of options you can do to mediate the staging server. And that's part of why when you have code that is running, you'd rather promote it than do a new build at the next stage, because you have real certainty that that build works and you want to promote that working code.
Yeah, so to give you an example of that, your Node, everybody, I mean, this is kind of a front-end conference, so everybody full stack JavaScript E. There's a little bit of, right? So Node, right? So one of the trickies with Node is that you have NPM in the mix, and every time you deploy, NPM needs to be working, otherwise your build isn't going to work. Well, and there's historically been some issues there. But with this flow, that's really not a problem, because you know if the build was successful in staging and you promote it, what you're promoting isn't something that's going to build again. It's a binary, right, it's a slug. So you're just moving it over. It's always going to work. And that's also nice when you roll back from catastrophe, because the build process doesn't need to play out. It's already there.
That pipelines, that is the core of this continuous delivery system, goes to GA tomorrow, and you'll see the post in our blog tomorrow.
So we're super excited about it. We hope you are too. We hope this makes your life a lot easier. In terms of single page stuff, please come over, check it out. It's super exciting. The room is small. We're filling it up quickly, but if you hang around, we'll make sure we give you a demo. If you use Ember, React, or Angular in your stack, you are going to want to be there. Cool.
Thanks very much, you guys.
Thank you so much. Can we make sure that whistling gets into the recording?